Hey, unconventional conventionists. Thanks for tuning your dial to Time Warp Radio, the Rocky Horror Picture Show Movie by Minute podcast, where with each 7 minutes, we can make you a fair one. I'm Haley Mervini.
And I'm Katie Tomini.
And we are your resident criminologists on all things Rocky Horror. And today's segment, our timestamps are minute 13:53 to minute 21:12. And in that section, we'll be covering There's a Light. Did you know that the castle is a hotel now?
I think everyone knows that by now.
We're also going to talk about why Brad and Janet can't seem to wait out this storm they find themselves in. And what's happening at Frankenstein Place? Are they having a party? Is it just one of the master's affairs? I don't know. But we were really excited because earlier this week I ordered the 45th anniversary release of the movie on Blu-ray.
It's so good.
It is so good, and I'd never seen the extra Midnight Experience special feature that is included on the Blu-ray, and Katie has the 35th anniversary. Was there any difference from what you could tell?
No, it
from your
is
version?
exactly the same Blu-ray, but honestly, the new box and the new case and all the beautiful artwork that's on there, I think it's worth it.
It's awesome that Shadowcast Midnight Experience is included in the special features, so folks who don't have a theater that's open, that want to learn the callbacks, the stage directions, good examples of the costumes, what to use for props.
The choreography.
It was so much fun to watch. We really loved it. And we watched it for our segment this week. So what do you say we just jump right into the rain?
Heck yeah.
Without an umbrella, without a rain jacket.
Solely a sheet of newspaper.
And the world's thinnest cardigan. The thinnest.
So, jumping right into it, Brad kicks the flat tire. Brad and Janet approach a tree, and a bolt of lightning strikes it. A thunderclap. Music commences, and Janet follows him, newspaper overhead.
So we looked at the frame where they show Brad kicking the tire in frustration, and obvious asshole move, didn't make sure they were prepared for a road trip. But I want to read into maybe what else we're seeing there.
We heard a really great fan theory from someone on our Instagram that they believe Frank booby-trapped the road so that Brad and Janet purposely get a flat tire and have to come to the castle. So we decided to look into that a little bit more. We paused the frame with the flat tire, and we saw a shadow of something behind the tire. It might be a bump in the road or
like a pothole maybe.
Yeah, we weren't sure exactly what it is, but there is something behind the tire.
And if I really want to put on my aluminum foil really tightly, I want to say I see a tire strip, like one of those things they lay out in cop movies where they're like, we need to stop the car, we need to stop, we need to give him a flat tire.
I don't know about that. I definitely did see something roundish though.
Yeah, and so talking about the map that we're going to see in the Denton affair later, it does look like the dead end sign is possibly on Frankenfurter's property boundary. Like it is believable that if Brad and Janet are able to walk that close to the front door, that might also be how Eddie and Columbia got lured into the castle.
Yep.
Or, any number of people who maybe took a wrong turn and got a flat tire at that dead end sign. Who knows?
Wipe 2, exterior castle gates.
Night Brad.
I almost said Night Brad.
So in the
I
the
really almost did
screenplay,
say Night Brad.
there's the hyphen between gates and night, not between night and Brad.
So they're saying that it's nighttime, and then they start the stage direction after night, but there's no indication that it's separate things, so it literally just says Night Brad every time.
Day Brad.
Fighter of the night, Brad.
So forever in There's a Light going forward, I'm always going to think of him as being Night Brad. Yeah.
Wipe 2, exterior castle gates, night. Brad and Janet stop by the castle gates. Brad reads a sign on the gate, enter at your own risk. Janet sees it too.
Everyone sees it.
It's
We all get to see
there
it.
forever.
It's there for like a full 20 seconds almost. I got in the habit of spelling out the letters in my head to be how long Janet is standing there reading the sign in the movie. But Brad just I don't even know if he knows how to read at this point. Like
just
looks at the
brushes it
sign.
off.
Yeah, and he's like, that's the front door. I'm assuming my liability. And
A bolt of lightning strikes, lighting up the sign. Hold on sign. Again, it's there forever.
forever. And with that, we get that bum, 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 which the virgins in the audience are now going, oh no, not another song. No, I forgot this was a musical. I forgot what we were even doing. We've seen too many narratives. I don't know what to keep straight anymore.
This was kind of Richard O'Brien's riff off of pop music of
Yes.
the day.
And it's in the key of E major, lyrics by Richard O'Brien with music by Richard Hartley. While you're waiting on stage to cross in front of this sign in the Shadowcast, you get a pretty good look at the costumes Brad and Janet have on. Can you detail for me what Brad's wearing?
Yeah, so Brad has on brown loafers, white, crisp white socks.
He bleaches them. You know.
He's got on gray slacks, a tan golf jacket with a light blue striped button-up shirt and a dark blue sweater vest.
Okay.
So he is ready for a night on the town, I guess. I don't know.
He's definitely more prepared for rain
Yes.
than Janet is, because you see throughout the song the rain falling off of his jacket.
Yeah, it's like he scotch guarded his jacket, or at least his mom did.
Yes, I believe that his mother scotch guarded his jacket, because it's seasonal wear, you never know you're gonna get caught in a rainstorm, whereas Janet is in her pink gingham dress, which we've said before I would have under my purple pantsuit, and I would change into the white cardigan before coming back on stage into the car for the car scene. I also have the white barrettes that I found them on Etsy randomly. I know they're a little hard to find, but they're also, I think they could be pretty easy to make if you wanted to get really crafty.
I found some yellow ones, some circular yellow ones, and then I
Yes.
just painted them.
Yes, mine were tortoiseshell originally, and then just spray painted them white, and you mainly get good looks at the barrettes in this number and a little bit in Time Warp, so it doesn't need to be the most accurate piece,
No.
but it is a good character costume piece.
Yes, definitely lets you know exactly who this person is.
And I also have my Janet gold plated necklace that I got on Amazon and just had made with the name on it.
Mine says Katie.
Yeah.
I've had it since I was a little kid, and it's finally come to good use.
Talk about celestial, man. Like, it was perfect that you had it.
Yeah.
And now they're like back in style. And I have my newspaper that I found on eBay. It's a plain dealer from the day that Nixon resigned. And it has a Nixon resigns headline on it, which I like to think if Brad is re-listening to Nixon's resignation speech 2 months after the fact.
Janet probably wants to read up on it too.
Yeah,
She's like,
still
why
reading
is
that
my
newspaper.
fiance so obsessed with this?
And it's so funny because you see in the frames coming up that the actual prop newspaper was coated with like this
Plastic. It was like
also kind of Scotchgard.
Yeah.
Like an anti-moisture material so that the newspaper wouldn't disintegrate on Susan Sarandon's head because they were literally drenching her with a torrential downpour.
But they did leave like the front corners not coated, so you can see that the edges that she's holding are getting really floppy and gross, but the rest of it still looks great.
So on the day of filming, they were probably like, no, just keep going. It's okay. The newspaper's probably going to fall apart soon. Let's just like finish this. Because Susan Sarandon famously got pneumonia on set. But like, look at what she is wearing. It is not built for a performer to get wet in. Which is why at this segment in a live shadowcast, we'll have like the Transylvanians running up and down the aisles.
With squirt bottles.
Yeah, and like it's always supposed to be just like a light misting along the theater house.
Hey, but sometimes you just get really into it and you pick an audience member and you just get them real wet.
One of my favorite Brads to perform with, Ricky, always sprays himself in the face with water.
Well, it's screen accurate
It's
because Brad's glasses are coated in water.
Cut to exterior castle grounds. The rain pours off that newspaper into Janet's face. She walks forward, slut of the jungle, watch out for that tree! And she sings, in the velvet darkness of the blackest night, burning bright, there's a guiding star. No matter what, a flash of lightning surprises her. She does a full-on
Jump and spin.
a jump and spin. And she continues her walk forward, catching up with Brad, singing Who You Are. And I think these lines let me know Janet is at her core, like she perseveres in situations. The fact that in a rainstorm, soaking to the bone, she sees the positive of the situation, that at least I'm here with Brad. Like, if I were going to be stuck in a rainstorm anywhere, I trust him to be leading me at least in the right direction, I hope.
And to me, no matter what or who you are, I think that she's saying that, like, you can just tell how compassionate she is. She thinks that everybody and everything has value and deserves love and acceptance. So
Would you say alien or human?
I think so, man. It
She's
just
very
shows
accepting.
me that Janet's a very compassionate person.
And she's also blindly trusting that whoever is at the castle, at the casserole dish, she thinks that it's not going to be like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, she doesn't have the thought in her head that there might be mass murderers on the other side of that door we're about to knock on.
One would hope.
Right, she's very hopeful about the situation. Lightning is just going on like crazy.
Yes.
Like, that is a full-on electrical storm, which started to make me think, like, why didn't Brad and Janet sit in the car for an hour
And
just to see if
wait and see if the storm calms down.
Yeah, if the rain lets up at all, and then maybe once it's a little less hard to see and walk in the dark, maybe then we can go knock on the castle door. But I'm a road trip fan, so in my idea, I'm like, I would have just like continued listening to the Nixon speech and been like, cool, I'm going to keep reading my newspaper until it lets up a little bit, and then we can walk when it's not raining so hard.
Yeah.
But they are oblivious to every bad omen. We got a sign literally telling them bad omens galore are ahead of them, and they are just so naive. They continue to walk along the road, and a glow of light appears in a window. It illuminates a path to the castle. Brad and Janet turn. The castle looms in the distance between the two of them.
So at this point, we wanted to talk a little bit about the castle and just the filming locations in general. So the castle is Oakley Court. And it's actually located next to another place that they filmed a majority of the film. It's called Bray Studios.
Okay.
It was a home built for Richard Tonson, a member of the Parliament, and it was built in the 1750s.
Whoa.
Yes, so it's very, very old, very old house, and it was bought and sold, and it eventually fell into disrepair in the 1900s, very early in the 1900s. When it was finally bought by Hammer Film Productions, it wasn't until 1951.
Okay. But that's
So-
when it started to become like a regular filming location.
Yes, they used it for like basically every single horror film. There's like
you could think of.
yeah, there's like almost 100 horror films that
Wild.
were set here. Dracula, Phantom of the Opera, Mummy's Shroud, the list goes on and on and on. Unfortunately, due to air travel becoming more popular, it was right in the flight path of Heathrow Airport, so they started to use it a little bit less, towards the 70s, just because they couldn't get good sound quality with their audio. So they eventually sold it to...
I can't possibly understand what that's like, having audio issues and
Exactly. And living
With a
in the
podcast, I
flight
can't
path of an
imagine.
airport.
yeah. But then they sold it.
Yes, they sold
Okay.
it to Bray Studios in 1970.
Okay.
And that's when it was used for sets of some cool sci-fi stuff that you might know about, including Rocky Horror Picture Show, but
you
also Doctor Who.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and they used another location, you said?
Yes, Oakley Court, which is the castle. So it's actually right next door to Bray Studios. It was built in 1859. So another very, very old building, not quite as old, but it was purchased by Hammer Films in 1949, and it was used for a lot of external shots for a lot of different films. Not nearly as many as Bray Studios was, but still quite a few films. When Rocky Horror was filmed there, it was literally falling apart. So when Rocky Horror was filmed there, it was actually literally falling apart. Some of the cast members have said that there were holes in the floors, holes in the walls. The walls were literally falling over. They didn't have any heat or bathrooms,
No.
which again is part of the reason Susan Sarandon ended up catching pneumonia.
Yeah, and what were the filming dates again? This was like from October
Yes, it was like October to December.
October 21st to December Friday the 13th. So, yeah, think of being like drenched, like you just got slimed, but with water, and then walking around a dilapidated set that is freezing in England in fall, winter.
Yes, it was so cold. Oakley Court was refurbished in 1981, and guess what? It's a hotel now. It's a hotel. Did you know that it's a hotel?
I didn't know, okay, guys? I didn't. I was blissfully unaware, and I saw, like, I don't know, on Reddit that was like, oh my gosh, the castle's the hotel now. So I just send Katie the link, and she's like, it's 2020. That's like all she responded to me, like, I don't know what to even say to this.
But to answer your question that you didn't ask, they do weddings. And they do themed weddings.
Like
and
Rocky Horror weddings.
Yes, they're super used to people showing up in costume. I know a ton of people who have gone to Oakley Court and stayed there and brought their costumes to do photo shoots in the lobby and stuff. Yes, they're used to it. It happens all the time.
We have to do it. We have to go. Brad and Janet resume singing There's a Light, and you hear voices that you know as a fan of musical theater is the chorus, but like, where are those voices coming from? Can Brad and Janet hear them? Are they responding to them? Over at the Frankenstein place. And then they just keep saying, there's a light, and it's like a mantra for them. Like, okay, I know it's really rainy right now. We just got to keep walking. There's a light. There's a light. And the voices say it's burning in the fireplace. Like, that's what's creating the glow. But with the electrical storm that I'm seeing, I'm thinking they might be harnessing that energy. You know, there's so much electricity happening behind the castle that who knows what's powering that castle, really. And the light that they're talking about is just this teensy little lit window in the distance. And you also see the scope of this place. Like,
It's beautiful.
Beautiful. And you also see a flag atop it.
Yes.
You don't really get a good look at it just yet. Brad and Janet turn to each other. They say to each other, there's a light in the darkness of everyone's life. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
You know, that's nice that they feel that way for each other, despite being as naive as they are. It is nice that at its simplest, they do care for each other deeply.
Yeah.
But at this point in the stage show,
There's another verse.
yes.
So Brad has a verse here, and it says, I can see the flag fly, I can see the rain, just the same. There has got to be something better here for you and me.
I can see the flag fly.
Yes. Freak flag fly.
For real, yeah. And it's interesting that that gets omitted from the movie. It's interesting that Brad's other song also gets cut from the movie. Maybe we'll figure out why the storyline and the narrative is a little bit more about Janet's journey.
Did
I
they
think.
hate Barry Bostwick? Am I starting a feud right now? But I mean, he's a Tony-winning actor. Like, he can sing. Why'd
Yeah.
you cut his song?
Yeah, and it's interesting if you consider they were casting him as a musical theater casting choice.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let him show off his chops.
He was Danny freaking Zuko.
For real. I don't know why that's included in the show.
And not in the movie.
Yeah, I want to think on it.
We'll try and figure it out.
We'll tinfoil our heads together on that one. So Brad and Janet look at one another and then are interrupted, cut apart by, is it 3 or 4 Transylvanians
It's
on
like a row of
motorcycles?
them. Yeah.
Yeah, they all go directly toward that castle, and now we know at least where those motorcycles are going to.
Yes.
Like, it's for Brad and Janet. I don't know if they see that as, oh, great. Like,
There's people there.
there's people home. Yeah, thank goodness that we're at least going somewhere where everyone's awake and, like, we're not gonna interrupt someone in the middle of sleeping or whatever.
So, fun fact about those Transylvanians on the motorcycles, they are actually the Transylvanians.
Yeah, the actors, the Transylvania actors.
They have tailcoats on, they have their whole costume on, but then riding leathers on top of their costumes. And they're on the backs of the motorcycles with helmets on.
Yes, they're not driving the motorcycles themselves because the actors are not trained motorcyclists. But Richard O'Brien turned to the hairdresser on the set and asked Raymond Gow why it was Transylvanians. Like, why didn't they just get any extra? Or why didn't they dress up the motorcyclists themselves as Transylvanians and, like, just have them be the Transylvanians? And Raymond Gow is quoted as saying, "Gorilla with a pipe, love. Gorilla with a pipe." It's nonsense. And there's no reason that the Transylvanians are the people on the motorcycle. But it does, I mean, it adds a little bit of magic.
It's fun.
Yeah. They drive toward the castle as the camera tilts up toward the small lit window with 3 little white doves on the adjoining roof to the right of it. And behind a pane glass window is the tortured face squinting into darkness, Riffraff. The darkness must go down the river of night's dreaming. Flow, Morphia, slow. Let the sun and light come streaming into my life. It is so hard to read those lyrics.
It's so
Talk about gorilla with a pipe. Like, nonsense.
It's so fun to listen to his accent, too, and it's really fun to try and do his accent.
He's a beach boy. He's doing his best, his best Barry Manilow impersonation.
It's just, it's my favorite verse, honestly.
But it's so bizarre. And
Yes.
I first was like, okay, straight interpretation.
Nonsense words.
Nonsense words. And that might be a hint to us as a viewer that Riffraff is alien. He's not using normal grammar. He's not using the normal English, colloquial terms that we've seen Brad and Janet use through Damn It Janet and through There's a Light so far. It's like a little strange, it's a little off-putting. We found this discussion page that's so funny. It was like so many comments long of people fighting each other of whether Riffraff says
Morpheus or Morphia.
and if it's flow, Morpheus, flow, if it's flow, Morpheus, slow, or if it's flow, Morpheus, low. I don't know if it matters, if it's going to be nonsense, if he's an alien. But Morpheus is the Roman god of dreams. So
It could make sense.
yeah, he could be saying that this whole time for him, working in this castle on planet Earth, has been dark and lonely, and he's felt imprisoned by the castle. I want to say, he's looking out at Brad and Janet. He sees them walking up the path. His dream is of mutiny. His dream is of kicking Frankenfurter out of the captain's chair so they can return home to Transylvania. So if he's saying, like,
If he's calling to Morpheus, the
his
god
dreams,
of dreams.
yeah, he's wishing for his dreams to come true tonight. Like, then light will come back into my life. Literally. He's like, there's no coming out of this. I don't like Earth. I don't like the people here. I don't fit in with them. They never liked me.
But then on the other hand, if you go with Morphia instead of Morpheus, Morphia could be another name for morphine or, kind of like getting that heroin vibe.
Yeah, what Time Warp might be interpreted as, which is like a druggy anthem of like going into a black void of your mind and just getting so doped up that you have lost touch with reality.
Yep. And so then it's like, flow, Morpheus, slow.
Yeah, maybe he's talking about the effects
drugs.
of heroin.
Yeah.
And the camera tracks in and tilts up to the roof where we see that white Transylvanian, I want to say it's the annual convention flag.
I
probably.
think it's just their Transylvanian flag of honor from their planet.
like their ship flag.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a beacon in the night for all those Transylvanians that are coming to the party tonight.
Bing, that's where I need to go.
Yep, that's where the party's happening. And you also see the crystal dome that's kind of overtaking a middle section of the castle, which Richard O'Brien loved so much. He used again in his series, The Crystal Maze. And that's got to be where the lab is, right?
It has to be.
And then that lightning bolt symbol is also a reference to the movie company RKO, which gets referenced
Quite a few times.
yeah, quite a few times. That was their logo, their company logo. So Riff Raff, our Riff Raff, Richard O'Brien made sure to pay homage not just to the films he was referencing, but also
The companies.
yeah, the production studios that made them the classics that they are. So Brad and Janet start moving down the driveway and getting closer to the castle door.
And again, they're repeating, there's a light over at the Frankenstein place. There's a light burning in the fireplace. There's a light. So they're just over and over, there's a light. Mm-hmm. So again, it's like that mantra of just keep going. We're almost there. There's a light. We can get to it.
But at this point, it makes me wonder if that's how they feel about their relationship.
They're trying to get to the light at the end of the tunnel.
You know? Yeah, I've totally had friends that are like, no, like, our anniversary is coming up, so I won't... Okay, friends. I've known myself to make those kinds of deals in a relationship of being like, no, it's the holiday season. We're just stressed out. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And, like, it's both good to have hope like that, but also you find out what's on the other end of this light source for them, which is exploring their sexualities, exploring the boundaries of their relationships. But this light at the Frankenstein place, as a trope, is normally a sign of
Humans.
yeah, intelligent life, you know? You're not expecting to come upon an alien, but that kind of is how that trope always plays out, is the source of the light is not always...
What you thought it was going to be.
Yes, it's not always a good light. And who knows, maybe their passionless, sexless relationship is just a long dark of night until nymphomaniac Frank is that light at the end of the tunnel. You know? Maybe.
Maybe.
Wipe to the interior of the study. We're back in the criminologist's office. He's in his armchair and he turns to flip the page from Dr. Scott's statement, his record of the events, to the map that Brad and Janet should have had, honestly. It shows you that they take that hard right turn and then they backtrack in a V toward the castle. So the map annotation says, map of geographical area involved in the Denton affair, with particular attention to the routes followed by both Dr. Scott and Brad Majors with Miss Weiss. Which, at this point in the movie, I always see the map and I see that dotted line as the path they could have taken. But no, that's the way Dr. Scott travels to the castle as well. Mm-hmm. So does that mean Dr. Scott also got a flat tire? And that's why when we see him show up at the castle gates, he's just in his wheelchair in the rain? Like he somehow wheeled himself from where he's gotten his flat tire.
He was looking for his nephew.
Ah, his nephew.
It's my worst German accent. Thank you.
No, it's your best Dr. Scott impersonation. Which, again, read his statement. It's
so good.
And this map is also of southeastern Ohio.
So we were right.
And it's south of the town Chillicothe. Chillicothe?
Sorry, we were probably butchering that.
Please tell me how to pronounce it.
Chillicothe?
And they're probably driving through what is the Wayne National Forest, with the town of Jackson visible in one of the corners. And Frank's castle is most close to the town of MacArthur, Ohio. So, sounds like a Shadowcast opportunity.
Yep.
Whoever's in MacArthur needs to...
Frankenstein's Place, man.
Dude!
It's a good cast name, just saying. And so it seemed that fortune had smiled upon Brad and Janet, and that they had found the assistance that their plight required. Or had they?
Or had they? So he knows the events that are transpiring because he's already in on his own joke. Mm-hmm. He's kind of misleading us by thinking that, like, yeah, this could be the right place. They could have come upon the exact right location that their situation was so desperate for. I just love that, or had they.
Or had they.
So good. And so as far as like stage directions go, as a Shadowcast, through There's a Light, you're practically, if you're Brad or Janet, you're on one side of the aisles for the first verse, and then you move to the other aisle just so that the spotlight has a place to travel to for the second verse. But you kind of get out of the way of the center of the stage so that wherever Riff Raff decides to pop up in the house, in the audience.
And I have seen it on one wing of the like side of the stage.
Uh-huh.
I've seen it in the audience. I've seen riffs just like kind of pop up from behind the stage. I've seen riffs everywhere.
I think, is it Crazed Imaginations in San Diego? Mm-hmm. I think they have a like loft area that's like
above their wing exit. Yeah.
It's so cool. So as long as Brad and Janet are making sure that both spots can hit Riff Raff for his solo, they're kind of otherwise just accessories. And
same kind of goes for Crim though as with Riff. It's wherever the spots can hit you. I've seen Crims all over the place. I've seen traveling Crims where every time Crim has a scene, he's in a different place. So it's just make sure the spots can get you, and other than that, live your life, man.
Yeah. They transition back with a lightning bolt mechanical wipe along with another thunderclap, and we see Brad and Janet at the front door. She takes the newspaper off of her head, and Brad starts to wipe all of that rain off of his glasses with his handkerchief. And Janet, as we've discussed, is experiencing symptoms of pneumonia. So she's like literally shivering, and also like could be also shivering out of fear, because she literally says to him, "Oh, Brad, let's go back. I'm cold and I'm frightened," which is good intuition. Maybe it doesn't look so friendly when she gets that close to it, you know?
Just a moment, Janet. They may have a telephone.
Dead set on going inside of the house.
Oh yeah, he doesn't care how she feels.
So Brad puts his glasses back on, rings the doorbell, and it makes a ding dong, asshole calling, sluts for sale, cheap, so cheap, she's got to use condom in her hair. And I have a theory that Brad and Janet after seeing that this is where the motorcyclists are arriving, they kind of hear music in the background.
Yeah, it's like very faint music.
I think Brad wants to see if that party can take 2 more RSVPs, And this is also a play on the trope for want of a nail, which is basically an Aesop's fable. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost, etc., etc. Where it just, with the single action of him ringing the doorbell and setting off the rest of the sequences of events that transpire, like that sign said earlier, they were entering at their own risk. Brad has no idea what he's getting himself into.
Yeah.
We also see in the background a griffin, which is holding a shield. And the griffin is mythologically known for guarding treasures, priceless possessions, being a symbol of divine power, or being a guardian of the divine. I think it's usually placed in the front of a home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that these aliens have decided to put it there correctly. And the shield he's holding that was the original Warner Brothers production logo.
Yeah, the shield.
Yeah. So, again, he's just trying to make every homage he can and thank every movie production company that he can. Maybe he was trying to get work.
Maybe.
At all of these places.
We hear the door slightly creak open, and Riff Raff's hand enters the scene.
Mm-hmm.
It opens to reveal Brad and Janet, and voices are heard in the background. Again, it sounds like there's a party going on in the distance.
But we also are opening up to Brad and Janet. Like, you and I are already at the party. We're with Riff Raff helping him greet guests at the door, maybe.
We are 100% part of this party.
And it gives an interesting perspective shift of the two of them as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
They are at a lower visual height than they have been, so like Barry doesn't look quite so tall, and Riff Raff really does take up a good portion of that frame.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Riff Raff is who we just saw in the window, and he is a hunchbacked servant.
I think Riff Raff is hoping they are delivering drugs right now.
Yeah, he's the candy man, dude.
Right. He was waiting for the candy man to show up, which is why he looks at them and he says, "Hello." Because he's waiting to see if the guy's going to be like, "Yeah, dude, it's going to be $20 for an ounce." But
Instead,
no, he
gets
says,
Brad saying, oh, hi. My name is Brad Majors, and this is my fiancée, Janet Weiss. I wonder if you might help us. You see, our car broke down a few miles up the road. Do you have a telephone we might use?
So definitely not the drug dealer he was expecting. And I think Riff Raff sees that they are soaking wet. We see him with a mop later. So clearly he's performing the upkeep at the castle, which is why I think he responds, "You're wet." Like, no, I'm not going to let you just, like, waltz in here after you walked around in a storm with a bad idea to not bring an umbrella.
Well, that and also, castles don't have phones, asshole.
And Janet's got this look on her face of, like, she's never seen a person look like Riff Raff before. The gauntness to his face. He's got that weird, like, half bald, half long hair, stringy blonde hair. He totally stereotypically fits that.
Igor.
Yeah, the lab assistant character. Like, she can't believe her eyes that a person like this exists in front of her. She does not get any kind of sexual innuendos that's how virginal Janet is. Because maybe Riff Raff is also being like, you guys are wet. You know? And I think if he'd said that to a Transylvanian, they would have giggled like you did right now. You know, they'd be like, yep, I am. Because it's also, there's an orgy going on tonight. You betcha I am. Janet is so oblivious. She just goes, yes, it's raining. Which anyone with eyes can see that.
Yes.
Yes. And Brad just wants to get in and party. He thinks Riff is being rude by just not letting them in already. And Janet is a little shell-shocked that the first person that she gets introduced to as Brad's fiance is this Igor dude that is kind of creepy, and then a bolt of lightning occurs.
The bolt of lightning illuminates a row of motorcycles parked by the castle. Brad sees them and reacts with surprise. Riff Raff realizes Brad has seen them.
Mm-hmm. And he always whips Janet around with him, too. Like, they both are shocked to see that many motorcycles. And Riff Raff straight up has like an, oh shit, they're in too deep now moment on his face. He straight up is like, I think you had better both come inside because we're kind of a cult here, and
You
the
kind
rule...
of figured that out.
Yeah.
So we gotta get you in there.
Yeah, like now the rule is either you assimilate or we kill you and we have you for dinner. So let's just come right on in. Come right on in. Janet does not want to go inside because her good intuition has been ignored all night long. And she says to Riff Raff, you're too kind, as she darts Brad in the back of the head with those Sarandon eyes, you know, that are just like, don't you dare walk in there without me. Because again, he's just like plowing straight on.
We dissolve to the interior stairway. We actually encourage you to pause this first wide shot of the interior
Before Janet and Brad close
enter the
it
frame.
in.
Yeah,
Right.
so right when it shows that shot of that hallway, pause it. Because Magenta is in that frame. And I have never noticed it until we were going like frame by frame of this film.
Like, she's there. Like, we know because we've seen the movie before that she's on the banister. But when you look at it, there is this weird column on top of the first, like, banister of the stair that has what looks like another magenta wig with a white bow on it. And there's another, like, duster-looking object that has a white bow on it. There's bears, taxidermy bear heads in the background that have a white bow on it. So, like...
It's all just kind of like fuzzy things with white bows on them.
And you're seeing the back of Magenta's hair. That big red mass. And it's like... It's so weird because we know she's there. But she is very intentionally hidden in plain sight. If it's only a glance, you would think that she's maybe somewhere else in that frame. So Janet turns to Brad, whispers, oh, Brad, I'm frightened. What kind of a place is this?
Oh, it's probably some kind of hunting lodge for rich weirdos.
Oh, which, like, I don't know how that makes me feel any better. Let's just repeat that. A hunting lodge?
For rich weirdos.
Right. Like, that sounds like where Dick Cheney hangs out. You know, like you could shoot your friend in the face and stay the vice president of the United States. If they're hunters and all of these taxidermied animals are their kills, you know, their trophies, that means they have like heavy artillery somewhere in the place. They've got like hunting rifles. Like that makes me feel nervous. Which is why she's like, oh.
Speaking of the taxidermy, though, we've got another couple film company references. We've got the eagle, which is Republic Pictures. And we've got that large snarling cat. That's from GM. You know, the lion in the beginning.
Yeah. We also, like, reading into the different kind of conspiracies, I think that maybe these animals are all taxidermied and being showcased as another example of aliens observing human culture and trying to emulate what they've observed of humankind because they're like all over the place and
there's so many taxidermied animals
and the decor of the joint, it's like definitely Victorian Gothic inspired. It's like a lot of wood paneling everywhere, and then it's got these really pretty stained glass panels that either look like leaves or grapes, maybe.
At closer look, we could almost see like a little pink circle around what looked like the grapes, which kind of made it look like a big old vagina in the middle of each panel. You know.
Yeah.
Live your life.
You know, they may have built in as a design feature, okay? When Riff Raff slams the door behind them and starts leading them into the next room, you can see Barry Bostwick exhale and you see his breath. Like, that's how cold it was on set that Richard O'Brien walks through his breath.
Yeah, I just want to remind you guys that there were holes in the walls. There was no heating at all. It was freezing.
Miss Sarandon is drenched.
Yeah, still soaking wet.
Her hair is like a little bit dried by this point because she's tried to like fluff it a little bit when she comes in. Riff Raff beckons them forward and says, this way.
As Riff Raff walks forward below the staircase, Magenta, her little red poof ball hair is visible on that stairwell. And she's holding a feather duster.
And then Janet, who is shivering because she's so cold, notices that, hey, like, there's music going on and it looks like there's a lot of people over in that part of the building. Are you guys having a party? Why, yes, Janet. They are having a party. In fact, a party thrown by Jim Sharman and company.
And at this point, we did want to give credit where credit is due, specifically to the main team who put together all of these creative decisions and made this film such a lasting piece of history for the last 45 years.
Yes, every bit of it is referenceable, whether it's the costumes, the camera work, the dialogue, every element works at like an 11 out of 10. You know, it tells you that this was a kismet group of people that got together and did their best work, and that's what made it a masterpiece. So Jim Sharman is an Australian director and writer of film and stage, and he was 30 years old when he filmed the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and before that he'd done as we've mentioned before, he staged the stage show, the Rocky Horror Show, in 1973, but previously had directed Hair in 1969 and Jesus Christ Superstar in 1972, plus a bunch of experimental theater, which made him the perfect director for Rocky Horror, in my opinion. He co-wrote the screenplay of the film adaptation, and loved it so much he continued to work with Richard O'Brien on Shock Treatment, and I thought it was really interesting that he was offered a much larger budget than what it was shot on. Like, literally, we're hearing about the set falling apart, but, like, the church, for example, in Damn It, Janet, they could only film the two sides of the room because there were no walls on the sides of the church.
They only had the front wall and the back wall.
Yeah, they were saving production costs everywhere they could because Jim Sharman insisted the original cast of, Richard O'Brien, Patricia Quinn, Nell Campbell, Tim Curry, and Meatloaf from the Roxy, and a number of the Transylvanians were original ensemble members of the stage show. So he was literally like deciding to do that instead of put walls on the church in Damn It, Janet, and make sure that he would be able to get the chemistry that he witnessed and also built himself on stage. Like, those performers have so much chemistry. Mm-hmm. Watching them as Transylvanians, we'll get into, it's a blast to watch a bunch of musical theater
nerds,
dancers, nerds, just like having a fun time with all of their favorite people that they've been working with for however long it had been at that point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
After Rocky Horror, he became the artistic director of Lighthouse Theatre Company in Australia, which is currently the State Theatre Company in South Australia. And he would stage radical classics and premieres of new work by major Australian dramatists. And he did that from 1985 and continued to stage new works until 2006, and then later published a memoir titled Blood and Tinsel in 2008, but otherwise has been pretty quiet.
Yeah, he's kind of retired, which, I mean, like, makes sense.
Yeah, you can sign your name on Rocky Horror and have a good day, sir.
We've got Richard Hartley, which he was the composer for a lot of the music. He was a longtime friend of Richard O'Brien and part of the original 4-piece house band for the Rocky Horror Show.
So he was like Stephen Trask.
Mm-hmm.
For Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so like makes sense that he was brought over to arrange the film adaptation then.
Mm-hmm. He also helped do Shock Treatment as well.
And then they never produced Revenge of the Old Queen, but if they had, he would have that credit to his name as well.
He was helping work on that one as well, yeah.
And he later worked in television through the 80s and then provided a bunch of scores for films in the 90s and then was last active in 2008 for the film Flashbacks of a Fool. And in 2009, he composed the UK musical The Stripper.
Which, like, I'm interested.
It sounds like he's remained consistent. But he may not get enough credit for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Richard O'Brien gets a lot of name association, and really we should be crediting the Richards for...
Without Richard Hartley, we wouldn't have that same...
The drama,
the old rock and roll feel that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't just romanticize the lyricist.
No.
It's...
composers, they do all the hard work, man.
And music is an art. And another iconic player to this production team was Peter
Suschitzky.
Say it again.
Peter Suschitzky.
Suschitzky. Oh my gosh. Suschitzky.
Sue. Shit. Ski.
Suschitzky. Thank you. for the lesson. And he's an ASC, which stands for
American Society of Cinematographers.
Very fancy. He deserves it, though.
He does.
He is a British cinematographer and photographer, best known for, obviously, Rocky Horror. But The Empire Friggin' Strikes Back?
Yeah, just a little movie, you know.
Oh my gosh, no. The Star Wars movie that people usually say is their favorite.
Yes.
And objectively people say is the best one. I don't think cinematographers get enough credit either. Like, talk about an unsung hero to a film.
There are so many just beautiful, iconic frames from this film. And if you mention a certain character, there's that beautiful picture that comes into your mind. And that's thanks to Peter Suschitzky.
Yeah. He later worked on Mars Attacks with Tim Burton and has been David Cronenberg's regular cinematographer since his movie Dead Ringers in 1988. And I mean regular, like every 3 to 5 years or less. Might even be like every couple of years. He's also worked with M. Night Shyamalan, Ridley Scott, Baz Luhrmann, Sam Taylor Wood.
Just like all the really big names that like you hear a film is coming out from them and you're like, I gotta see that.
Yeah. And that tells you about his style. Yeah. I appreciate the work that he did on this movie.
Absolutely
I think it's
gorgeous.
Oh, the floor show.
And speaking of gorgeous, we got to talk about Brian Thompson.
Ugh, gorgeous Brian Thompson.
So Brian Thompson is responsible for he was the set guy.
Yeah.
He was the design guy.
Yeah.
So he is responsible for the lips. So the lips were inspired by Lips Over Hollywood by Man Ray. It's a really cool picture. Please go look it up if you haven't seen it.
We'll put it on the blog spot.
And that not only inspired Rocky Horror, but it also inspired the iconic Rolling Stones lips with the tongue out.
But I think Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn credit Rocky Horror to the Rolling Stones lips. So I want to live in their belief of
their
that.
little fantasy world.
Yeah, I can believe that, you know, the lips. Mick Jagger, you know?
Mick Jagger saw the lips and he's like, we gotta do that.
He has his own set of lips, you know? And he was like, oh, I bet I could probably sing that science fiction song that Richard O'Brien sings it. I bet I could sing it.
What I also love about Brian Thompson, though, is all the crazy sets that you see, he would hide things in the details. So, like, we were talking about with Brad and Janet's statements, and also all of Krim's office. The Denton Affair, most of those binders that are up on those walls actually had stuff in them. I'm sure you've heard about the Easter eggs that are hidden around the set. That is also thanks to Brian Thompson. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please look online because
we
there
have
are
one for the next episode. We have one photo.
We do. We have a photo for the next one, but there are Easter eggs hidden throughout the films, and I mean literal Easter eggs.
So maybe he is to credit for Easter eggs in general. You know, if he was literally hiding Easter eggs, and then people were like, "Oh, you can like add to the narrative and like nod certain character traits by what's in their house and what's in the frame." And even though we flip through the Denton Affair at a pace that is criminal for how much detail is in it, even just from the brief flips of pages, it feels like a real document. Like, that's what that level of detail can bring to a film. And I mean, Kubrick, my favorite, was famous for hiding details in the backgrounds. So
it just honestly wouldn't feel as complete.
It wouldn't feel real.
Yes.
You wouldn't feel like you are in the criminologist's office if he doesn't have years worth of affairs on the shelves behind him, you know? And we can also thank Brian Thompson for the dripping red title face.
Yes.
That is also has a life of its own, and people just use it as like a Halloween font and don't know it came from Rocky Horror.
The next person we want to talk about is...
No, I want to know who's to blame. Who is to blame?
Blaine. Sue Blaine is just the most wonderful woman. I absolutely love her. She is part of the Most Excellent Order of British Empire. So that is like a crazy, insane title.
Yeah.
She attended Wolverhampton College of the Art and the Central School of Art and Design, graduated in 1971. So she was fresh out of college when she started working on the Rocky Horror Show. And she also worked on Hair and Jesus Christ Superstar. She was responsible for costumes in all of those stage shows.
And she was only 26 at the time of filming. Her budget was $1,600. She admitted that she'd never seen a science fiction movie before conducting her research for the film. But what she 100% is to blame for is the whole punk rock aesthetic. That's probably why she's been honored by the British government.
Yes.
Is because she created the look of those leather jackets with patches and pins and buttons all over them.
The ripped up clothes.
Fishnets. Dog collars, wearing them as a human. The eye makeup. It's just...
She literally created punk as an aesthetic, of course. But she's incredible.
Like, she didn't know that 45 years after working on a movie that you and I would invest our time, money, tears, cum, and money.
Most importantly, money.
into recreating her looks. And we are not the only ones. Like, the number of people, when you think that have at least one costume piece from Rocky Horror, like, that is an insane number of people.
Yep.
And that all came from one gal.
One young 26-year-old gal.
Yeah, just making it work on a budget. Making it work.
The original makeup from the stage show was, of course, done by Pierre Laroche, who is an insanely famous makeup artist. He did David Bowie's makeup for the Aladdin Sane and Ziggy Stardust covers. Okay. So he's just chef's kiss. Beautiful man. And the makeup in the film is inspired by his original makeup, but I wanted to give him a shout out because I love him.
And then another key player to this team was Raymond Gao, who was the hairdresser on the piece and was the famous quoter of Gorilla with a Pipe. So thank you, Raymond, for Frank's insane mop of hair.
Yes.
For Susan's soft and supple curls. And for spray painting Patricia Quinn's hair red
every single day.
I love that team. Could you imagine working on that team?
I just love it so much because they kept almost every single key player from the beginning. And that's why it works so well.
You stick to what you know with the people you know how to do it with, I guess.
Absolutely, and it turns into this beautiful masterpiece.
And I mean, they didn't know it at the time. They were getting panned by critics and were being told their film was not getting distributed.
Yeah.
How disappointing would you feel that, like, this thing that you know is good because you staged a production of it and it inspired a whole fashion aesthetic as well as a sexual awakening in fashion too, because that's when Vivienne Westwood opened her lingerie boutique.
Yep.
I would feel so frustrated that
The film wasn't even going to be widely distributed.
Yeah.
It just got pulled and was like, nope, no, we're done.
But that
Joke's on them.
you just can't, you gotta persevere. Like Janet with a light in the darkness. You just gotta, I guess, stick to your guns because they created something that is lasting. So if we were shadow casting up to this point, Brad and Janet would end up over at the Frankenstein place. They would end up on usually the downstage right side of the stage. And Riff Raff will peek his head out of either
A curtain.
yeah, like at Midnight Insanity, there's a ramp with a curtain blocking off the backstage area. So that's really useful for both Riff Raff's reveal now and another reveal we'll get to
In
next
just a little
episode.
bit, yeah.
Yeah. Or at like Chaos, we have our like changing dividers, our changing room dividers, that Riff Raff will just kind of peek out from behind. You have your moment of dialogue, and then you follow Riff on stage, basically. However,
Yep.
you get from either the ground floor to the actual stage.
Or just walking across what you have.
Basically, at that point, Brad and Janet follow Riff Raff from downstage right to...
Yeah, Riff is coming downstage left, and Brad and Janet are kind of
You kind of
stage right.
travel, but you kind of hover. Because
Yeah.
there's not a ton of space to move, because then also...
We're kind of framing the center of the stage.
Right, and then Magenta will be right there in the middle, so that she's set for her reveal that's about to happen. And when I'm playing Janet, I treat the theater house like how Janet must have felt walking into the annual Transylvanian convention. And like, if I were not performing on stage, I would be in that audience, like having a party. So when I'm on stage, I look out at the audience. I'm really invested in the idea of continuing to go into the castle, because I think that leans into Janet's
Awakening.
right. Yeah, she's got to start somewhere, you know? She's got to be a little intrigued.
For Brad, what I like to do is I just think of Brad as a big old doofus. Like he's like a golden retriever.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I'm excited and I don't know what I'm excited for. And so one of the best notes that I got when I was learning Brad was that you have the firmest grip on Janet's shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
That she follows you. So you have a grip on her arm, on her shoulder, on her waist. You like
You're a
constantly, yeah, you constantly have like control over her and you guide her.
But that's not to be confused with like not knowing the stage directions. Like they still walk together. Mm-hmm. I'm never a fan of in a shadow cast when it looks like Janet's like really getting led around.
Yes, no.
Because I don't know, that's not how real people walk in real life. Like I don't lean on my partner when we're walking out in public and rely on them to guide me around the stage.
I think Brad just feels a little bit protective over her. So he has this grip on her of like, mm-hmm. This is my woman.
And you know, she also may have been pneumatic and may have been physically like feeling weak.
Yes.
And like I don't know, maybe to some level Barry was supporting Susan, mm-hmm. Walking around set. But at that point, Riff Raff responds to Janet's inquiry by saying, "You've arrived on a rather special night. It's one of the Master's affairs." Which, like the Denton affair?
Yeah.
Like, is that to be believed then that all of the affairs in the criminologist's office are all of Frankenfurter's affairs.
I like that idea.
I really like the idea that Riff Raff gets this light bulb moment of realizing Frankenfurter is distracted tonight. Like, oh yeah, we already know that we possibly know he's tried to create a Rocky Horror before, and that his mistakes are either the Medusa statues in the creation room, or it was in the coffin that got buried in the last episode.
Tiny coffin man.
That tiny coffin. But I think Riff Raff understands from experience of the many masters' affairs that, like, this might be our opportunity to mutiny Magenta. Like,
this is it. We've made it. What we've been planning for.
We told ourselves when Eddie arrived that the next time this happens, the next time we have humans wander in, we're going to take advantage of the situation, because we know that the last humans that came around ended up being half a brain for a new tank child and a groupie. So for all they know, they think Brad is going to get
harvested.
Yeah, harvested and lobotomized. And that Janet is going to become Frank's new sex toy that's going to, like, hang around and worship his majesty. And Janet is kind of game, because she isn't like, oh, because we've seen that's how she responds to Brad when she doesn't want to respond to Brad anymore. She says, lucky him.
To which Magenta responds, he's lucky, you're lucky, I'm lucky, we're all lucky.
Ha ha ha! Oh, that's so hammy.
I love it.
Like, even if we tried to do it, it wouldn't do it justice, because I think that's when Magenta realizes it too. Like, yeah, Frankenfurter's gonna get lucky, you're gonna get lucky, and if things go according to plan...
Riff and I are gonna get lucky too, because we're gonna get the hell off this planet.
Yeah, we're gonna go the fuck home. What we've been wanting to do for however long Riff and Magenta have been assigned to Frankenfurter. Mm-hmm. You know? However long they've been waiting, they've been asking to go home. So, like, Magenta is otherwise unnoticeable in this scene until she has her outburst. Mm-hmm. Then a clock starts to strike in the background, and Riff walks toward a coffin clock. It's like a grandfather clock, yes, with a real human skeleton on the inside. We'll get to it. He dusts the skeleton off. He dusts the face of the coffin off. Brad and Janet are freaked out by Magenta's outburst, and now, like, their worst nightmares are coming true. Like, oh no, not only are they weirdos, they're also in a musical. They're gonna start singing again. And, like, this is weird. Like, we just met these people. We didn't behave this way when we walked into the house. Like, we've been trying to find the way to the phone, and they're just, like, totally caught off guard. And then our namesake song begins. Even if you don't know anything else about Rocky Horror,
you know the time warp.
Yeah, like, it's a household culture touchstone piece. Mm-hmm. That it's hilarious because it's a parody. It's so meta that it's a parody dance song that became a hit dance instruction song. You know?
And again, the lyrics are Richard O'Brien and the music is Richard Hartley. Mm-hmm. So we've got the Richards, they're still on point.
in the key of A major, and the majority of the lyrics are dance instructions. Or are they? In the stage show, Time Warp originally played after Sweet Tea and was fifth in the
song list.
song order, right?
Yeah.
But it works so well as
The
Brad and
introduction.
Janet's, right, as they are fully immersed in not just the presence of a couple of people of a different culture, like they're in the presence of a bunch of aliens that are also stationed all over the world. So like they're also crazy cultured. If you think that like they're coming from a bunch of different countries and coming together and discussing what they've learned from their travels. But the Transylvanians know this already. They
Yeah.
already know the song.
It's like the equivalent of learning square dancing or line dancing in
Yeah.
middle school for Americans.
Or like the electric slide.
Yes.
Like everyone knows the electric slide, and when we get together for weddings, we do the electric slide, even if you hate it. Like, I think that's why we'll see them in a moment. Like, the Transylvanians participate in the time warp, but they also are kind of voyeurs of it and kind of participate, kind of watch, kind of participate, kind of watch. And it parodies really line dancing so well. But they're kind of instructing Brad and Janet, but at the same time, as an audience, you are, you feel that thing that Brad and Janet feel when they burst through the ballroom doors.
Of like, whoa.
Yeah, like if you're sitting in a Shadowcast audience, you have any myriad of fans surrounding you doing any level of the time warp, you know? Like it's just so great. It's so meta. I like have a little bit of a brain, like I can't believe it that like what is reality if we're like having the same experience in the same type of environment that Brad and Janet are experiencing in that environment? I don't know. It's nuts. Shadowcast. This is why I love shadowcasting.
Let's dive into the lyrics
Let's
here.
get into it. Riff Raff says, "It's astounding. Time is fleeting. Madness takes its toll." And his delivery, like we said earlier, he's totally like an Igor, monotone. He's really calm, very even. And it's a little unsettling because he's also showing off this coffin, which is so creepy.
So, according to Richard O'Brien, the clock is a real coffin with a real skeleton, and it was commissioned by the wife of the skeleton. So the skeleton was this woman's husband, and she made the coffin as a real coffin for him.
That is so metal. Like, talk about punk rock, metal, horror. To have a real skeleton in your movie, Richard O'Brien. Wow.
This is like the opposite side of the poltergeist curse, man.
I know. If only they knew. But it's also a ticking clock, which for a couple, like it could be their impending wedding, it could be the societal pressures to have children. Like Brad and Janet are terrified both of the sound of the chiming of the clock and of facing the reality of death in front of them. You know, they weren't expecting to see a skeleton when they just asked to use the telephone, you know? And in that same frame, we finally see the full portrait of American Gothic, which is part of a large painting collection that clearly Frankenfurter has amassed. But I love this frame because you see the two characters in the portrait, the skeleton and Riff Raff, all on kind of the same eye level. Mm-hmm. It's very visually appealing. The portrait is a painting of oil on beaver wood by Grant Wood in 1930. And it was named for the architectural style of the window that's behind the dentist and sister of the artist. And it's the same type of window that was at Denton Episcopalian Church. And that too gets referenced in, you name it, it's been done.
Yep.
Like it's been on The Simpsons, it's been in movies, it's been in TV shows, like
It's everywhere.
it's everywhere. And I think that's Riff and Magenta's maybe impression of what American life is like. It's dull and flat, and the two characters look pained. You know, they look tired. And originally, when the painting premiered in the 30s, people in, I think it's Iowa, they were outraged that that was Grant Wood's
Depiction of
them, right? And that they looked like Midwest life was not colorful and that people hated it. And Grant Wood was basically like, hey, if that's how you interpreted it, then guess that says something about yourselves. Because he meant it as an homage to the time. Like, he saw that clearly society was changing because it's a man in a, like, suit jacket that's also carrying a pitchfork. So there's a clashing of cultural ideals there, of going into the modern world of being a businessman versus a pioneer and a farmer. And I don't know, if that's how Riff and Magenta really feel about Earth, then, like, no wonder they want to leave so bad. And maybe that's how it looks to people that are, like, sexually repressed, you know, that are not, in a Transylvanian's perspective, are not giving themselves over to absolute pleasure. You know what I mean?
Riff then says,
but listen closely.
not for very much longer.
I've got to keep control, which he fails to do because he starts to flail around maniacally and starts screaming in a totally different vocal register than what he's been talking to Brad and Janet at. And they sandwich Brad and Janet together, so they're surrounded on all sides. And Riff Raff starts to dance around the elevator shaft in an extraordinary fashion, and we get a really good scope of
This entrance room.
yes. What do you see? What do you notice? What's the first thing you notice?
So, like, first thing right off the bat, my eyes go to the back of the room, and there is this big china cabinet, but it has all of these, like, marble busts and statues in it, which, I'm sorry, but I didn't realize that
Those were stored there.
went in china cabinets.
Because later, then we see a bunch of porcelain and fine china, like, dogs statues on the mantle of the fireplace in the same room, which is more evidence that these people don't understand that
Something that is more breakable,
Right.
such as porcelain dogs, should go into the china cabinet where they are protected.
right, they're behind a locked door versus, like, if a marble bust gets knocked off of a mantelpiece, the worst thing that'll happen is it like gets beheaded or it like breaks in half. So it's not as delicate an item. But we also see this leopard right next to the elevator shaft. And he is wearing a boa constrictor just like we wear our floor show boas.
A boa as a boa.
Okay, I have a theory on this. But so he starts screaming like he's a mind-controlled crazy person. He says, I remember doing the time warp, drinking the moments when the blackness would hit me and the void would be calling. They sound like they're talking about heroin and like literally blacking out, but maybe that's how the Transylvanians travel to and from Earth. I believe that they have a line dance about their mode of travel. Like, it makes total sense. And especially if the way that they get to and from, or the way they power their ship is by doing this dance.
Hey man, I'm into it.
Yeah.
I've got my tinfoil hat on.
And I also think that Riff Raff is laying out his plan of action, his master plan to Magenta in the same kind of disjointed way that we've heard him sing in There's a Light. He's communicating to her when he does the kick. It's in that same frame as that leopard with a boa constrictor. He's basically telling her, this is our opportunity. We have fresh meat. Like,
Get him in there.
Yeah, we need to get them in there. We need to get this party going, because when it comes to floor show, we are gonna do elbow sex, secret handshake, mutiny, bro. Yeah, they shake on it. They're like, cool, that's the plan. We're gonna watch the events unfold, and then when the iron is hot, we will strike. And Magenta pushes Brad and Janet through the ballroom doors. The doors open, revealing Brad and Janet in a huge black and silver ballroom with a throne-like chair on the far side of the room. And then otherwise it's like a giant theater proscenium. And this was set at the castle at Oakley Studios, whereas the ballroom we see at the floor show was constructed on a soundstage so they could hold the swimming pool at the bottom of the set. But wow, look at that room of colorful people.
It's so beautiful. In the body of the room are the Transylvanian guests. They are the people that Brad and Janet passed on the road. They are the Transylvanian secret agents assembled on this special occasion from all over the earth. It is the annual Transylvanian Convention, announced by an official banner suspended over the ballroom. They are all dressed in a strange but elegant evening wear. And again, that is directly from the screenplay.
Oh.
So this, I would say that this is canon, man.
Yep.
This is canon. They're secret agents from around the world. They're assembled for their convention.
Yep, and they're getting together to taste each other's cuisine that they've been observing. And, if this is the only time of year that the Transylvanians all get together, all 20 plus of them get together to hang out, this is like their Christmas, And Patricia Quinn, when describing this group of people, she called them all freaks in the sense that they're tall, short, thin, fat, every different body type. And Richard O'Brien responds to that by saying, yeah, you lose the sense of norm in that room. Like, Brad and Janet, looking as normal as they do, as square as they do, also are sticking out like sore thumbs.
Because everyone else is so wild and out there.
Yeah. And there's no standard of normalcy whatsoever. You can't get a read on this group, which is great. I think it makes them credible as aliens.
They are distorted versions of the guests from the Denton wedding. A party spirit prevails. They throw their arms out in a plea to riffraff on the balcony. Brad and Janet walk forward into the room. The door closes behind them.
They sing, "Let's do the time warp again." And by definition, a time warp is a phenomenon that changes the flow of time by speeding it up or making it run more slowly, according to like physics, you know. And physicists have known about time warps for roughly 100 years, and some of them believe that we're in the middle of a time warp present day, which, I mean, it's just people's perceptions of reality.
I mean, this is 2020, anything could be possible. So.
Right. Yeah. And I thought it was really funny because when I looked up the definition, the sentence that they give as an example is, "Walking into the castle was like entering a time warp."
Ha ha.
Which, okay, Rocky Horror has even
Permeated
into the dictionary. And this dance number, Jim Sharman says is his homage to the French film Bande Apart, which is also what Quentin Tarantino is referencing in Pulp Fiction with Miss Uma and John Travolta when they're doing their sock hop dance scene. Mm-hmm. Which, that explains why the Transylvanians are wearing white socks, you know?
Yeah,
that tells you. And it was choreographed by David Tagore. He probably never imagined that audiences for 45 years would be practicing not just the steps to the time warp, but like, if you're a Transylvanian, if you're a Shadowcast performer that performs a Transylvanian, like, you're also learning the specific choreography that the Transylvanians do as they like turn and put their arms in the air. Yep. It's very specific.
So the Transylvanians were not part of the original stage show. They did have ensemble members, but there weren't actual Transylvanians. So this whole choreographed part of the movie is original to the movie.
Which is cool.
So that's completely credited to David Tagore.
And they say, "Let's do the time warp," as they plea out to riffraff. We're really excited. We're going to start a 4 or 5 part profile of our Transylvanians.
We're going to give them to you 5 at a time. I know it's a lot.
But that way, if you are a Transylvanian performer and you are wanting to build your character and this can help, like, those actors are just as much a part of it as Barry and Susan
absolutely
are. And yeah, let's get into them.
All right. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Christopher Biggins. He was 27 at the time of filming. Mm-hmm. He is the Transylvanian in the blue shirt with the large circular sunglasses. He eats the cream puff or the eclair during the time warp. Mm-hmm. One of the first ones that we see up close. So he did a lot of television work in sitcoms, TV shows, reality TV throughout his life. And he actually is very famous in England. He was on Big Brother. He was on Master Chef Celebrity Edition. He's also a little problematic. He's made some not so great comments about bisexual individuals and,
And his stance on gay marriage is confusing.
He is an openly gay man, but he opposes gay marriage. So, it's he's a little confusing as a human being, but...
It's confusing, too, because the frame we see of him of him licking the cream filling.
It makes it seem like he's kind of an open-minded, like...
Well, it straight up is homoerotic.
Yeah.
Like, it's an iconic piece of Time Warp. Like, you always see that one Transylvanian eating a cream puff. And, yeah, it makes me sad that men of that time were not...
accepting of even their own sexuality.
Yeah, it's like...
So he can also be seen in the wedding scene as the man with the brown hair. He has a light gray or silver bow tie on, and he wears wireframe glasses. He's on the left side of the church as Ralph and Betty are leaving, and he's one of the 3 guests that is emphatically throwing rice at Ralph and Betty.
And then we also have Stephen Calcutt, who was 23 at time of filming and was all 6'6" of him at time of filming too. He was known for Flash Gordon in addition to this credit. And he was also used as a body double and stand-in for a couple of the Harry Potter films, and then also in the original Star Wars trilogy, because probably he had the connection with Peter Sushitsky.
There you go.
So he probably had that connection.
Yeah, he was a stand-in for Darth Vader and also Chewbacca.
How cool.
Love it.
And he's that tall Transylvanian with long hair in the green shirt with yellow sunglasses. And we didn't peg him when we saw him the first time. That's how normied he was in the wedding scene.
Yeah.
He also is like a little hidden behind Brad when they're taking their like one of the portraits at the wedding.
But he is the tall guy in the plaid jacket. We figured out who it was.
But that tells you what a change in costume can do.
Yeah,
to a
costume and
performer.
hair and makeup. It's magic, honestly.
Yeah.
Next, we've got Imogen Clare. She was 32 at the time of filming. Unfortunately, she has passed away. She passed away in 2005 from cancer. But she studied ballet and was part of the Royal Ballet Company. She's choreographed a ton of musicals, was in Listomania with Nell Campbell, and was in Flash Gordon with Stephen Calcutt. She's
cool.
also actually in Shock Treatment, too, which I think is awesome.
So they just kept working together.
Yeah.
All these folks liked each other so much that they were like, cool. And then the next movie?
Exactly. So she is the Transylvanian with the black pompadour, the silver vest, and the thin pointed sunglasses. And in the wedding scene, she can be seen exiting the church on the right side with the cream and brown polka dot dress.
Lindsay Ingram is the Transylvanian that's also known as the Peggy Bundy Transylvanian, which is such an accurate callback for her. She's got large red-brown hair and a bright red shirt. She originally auditioned for a role in the show Tooth of Crime at the Royal Court Theatre, which Richard O'Brien was also in. And Richard Hartley was did he write the music on Tooth of Crime?
I believe that he was the director.
Ah, okay.
Or the casting director, at least.
Sure. But he decided he didn't want her for that. He wanted her for Rocky Horror. Mm-hmm. And she also appears in Shock Treatment.
Yeah.
But in the wedding, she's wearing the large pink hat and the fur coat, who takes the video camera from one of the photographers.
Next, we've got Pamela Obermeyer. I actually couldn't find a ton of information about her, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. She's the Transylvanian with the big pirate hat and the afro with the white sunglasses. She worked with Jim Sharman on his productions of Hair and Jesus Christ Superstar, which Richard O'Brien also took part in, as well as Sue Blaine and Tim Curry. So that's super cool. She was also the singer of an English rock group called Truth. And now she goes by Bethany Brown, and she's a singer with her husband and the rest of her family.
As far as Transylvanians in the Shadowcast go, we would run down the aisles of the theater house and run up on stage, usually when Riff does his floor show kicks, as a good signal for wherever you are to come and do the time warp. And we would usually have 2 or 3 or 4 Transylvanians on stage so we could do the choreography and have it look full, you know, and then have whoever else either in the front of the stage or along the aisles to add to the party atmosphere, because I think Transylvanians could be utilized in so many ways in a Shadowcast.
I agree.
I think they could be the motorcyclists that are in over at the Frankenstein place. They can be the dogs that chase Rocky Horror through the castle later in the film.
Something that I've always loved is when I was a Transylvanian way back in the day. Hey, Kimmy Wong, Transylvanian here. Hello. Back on Midnight Insanity, we used to have choreography for almost every single song.
That's cool.
Even the ones that the Transylvanians weren't in, we made ourselves part of the show. And I love that. I honestly...
You always need good Transylvanians.
They're the heart of the show.
They are. And like, I would love if I were Transylvanian for the night, I would just find different places to sit in the theater throughout the night and get to watch the show for free because I'm on cast, and get to participate in callbacks, which I would be doing anyway. Like, if I'm sitting at home on my couch, I'm doing the callbacks. So, like, if you guys have any interest in doing shadowcasting or performing, Transylvanian is so much fun, not just as, like, an intro to Rocky Horror, but, like, that also can be all it is, you know? If you want to be a Transylvanian forever...
Oh, it's so much fun.
It is so much fun. You can just, like, add to the party atmosphere all night.
Yeah, and one of my other favorite parts about Transylvanian is there are so many ways to interpret how to look. So there are casts that do just the traditional costume, screen accurate, what they're wearing in the film. But then there are other casts who do more of a punk rock aesthetic, or some casts that do more of a lingerie aesthetic. It all depends on where you want to take it.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's all up for interpretation. They could be pleading to Riff Raff for more drugs. They could be pleading to him to take them back to their home planet.
Please.
Or... like, the lyrics could also be interpreted as an orgy is happening right there on the floor with all those folks.
Let's do the time warp again.
Yeah, either participating or being voyeurs as heck. So as soon as we get used to the room we're in, we get yanked back to the criminologist's office, and... like, oh my gosh, no wonder, I am going to say this so many times, but like, people who've never seen this movie before,
they come out of it and they just go, what did I just watch?
It's so confusing because, like, you barely have time to understand the lyrics before you have a narrative shift and you have a perspective, not even like you have someone now talking to you.
So the narrator has moved from his desk to the wall behind him, and he pulls down a chart. It's literally like, you know, the maps that the teachers had in school?
Elementary school?
Yeah. So he pulls one of those down, and it has the dance steps on it of the time warp. And he starts to tell us how to do the time warp. It's just a jump to the left.
And he gestures with his pointer, and I love thinking that this is such a utilized chart in Transylvanian world that they instruct it in their elementary schools, literally. Like, here you go, kids, we're all going to learn the time warp now. And it also gives a lot of interesting, something to interpret with the criminologist, maybe. If he has it in his office,
Where did he get it?
is he on the planet Transylvania too? Is he, is this an educational document for young Transylvanians on the horrors of traveling to Earth?
Has he been studying the Transylvanians so long that even though he is from Earth, he was able to acquire some Transylvanian artifacts?
I like that too.
How long has this been going on? How many affairs have there been?
How often has he had to instruct people how to do the time warp? You know, it's that many times. And the guests, we get a mechanical star wipe back into the ballroom. The guests leap to the left in a giant step and continue, and a step to the right. But it's like, right, because they take a, not just one step, it's
3.
3 steps to the right, technically. Then we shutter blind mechanical wipe back to the criminologist's office, and he points to the next step on the chart with his hands on his hips, sings, with your hands on your hips. It's so redundant. Like, he could just be showing us the chart.
Well, it's because Richard O'Brien was trying to make fun of these dances, like the YMCA, the Hustle. He was trying to make fun of them. So that's why it's so redundant, is because it was supposed to be a joke.
Yeah, but people take it seriously. And we mechanical wipe back to the ballroom. The guests have their hands on their hips. They continue. You bring your knees in tight. But it's the pelvic thrust that really drives you insane. And I just want to talk about those mechanical wipes for a
They're
sec.
so cool.
Because you don't notice them. They happen so quick.
And they mimic what's going on in the film.
Yeah. And if we're talking about the mechanical wipe of even when Brad and Janet arrive at the castle from transitioning back from the criminologist's office, then as well, it's a lightning bolt transition. And it's just so cool. It's so 70s. It's so vintage. Like, these are techniques that don't get utilized anymore because everything is on video.
Yeah, it's all digital now.
Yeah. So, like, needing to splice film together in a fun way, like a PowerPoint presentation. But it also, it adds a layer to the film. Like, they could just be cutting to and from the criminologist, but I think it adds to the disorienting factor of like space-time travel, of like, not only are we sitting in the audience getting discombobulated from jumping back and forth between Crim and the ballroom, but it's also these transitions that also give us like flashes of black. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is a little like,
It's like,
they're talking about the blackness hitting them, you know? Like, it's also hitting us as viewers. And the row of guests, like, pelvic thrust in a circle together, and we get like a ceiling view of them going insane. And as they sing "Let's Do the Time Warp Again," we see Christopher Biggins lick that cream puff filling as he holds
a tray
Yeah,
with an Irish flag on it.
Yeah, more of the donuts and then an Irish. So are donuts from Ireland?
No.
So like,
Neither are eclairs or cream puffs. Like, none of the things that I thought those might be are from Ireland. Not that I know of, at least.
so like, how good are these Transylvanians really at observing American life. If this is their approximation that, oh yeah, Ireland, I mean, okay, if you're from Ireland and cream puff or cream puff donuts are your specialty, please let me know.
Please. Can you send us some?
But that one frame is too much for Janet, and she faints into Brad's arms. Oh, so dramatic.
And it's the most dramatic faint I have ever seen in my life. She has her hand to her forehead, and her legs are to the side, and she's just
she
keeled
loves
over.
a dramatic faint or a dramatic hand to her face. That's like a typical Janet-ism. And I really fall into my Brad. Like,
it's fun.
yeah, and also you gotta look like it's a convincing feint if you're shadow casting Susan Sarandon, who's probably passing out from fever
But
and
please
pneumonia.
make sure that you tell your Brad that you were actually going to faint. I have watched a Janet get dropped before. It's not pretty.
Yes, absolutely. Consent all the time, every time. And I just love this feint because it could have a few different connotations. She could either be fainting like acting, like faking it, and is trying to like create a distraction, or like pretending like she needs to remove herself from a dramatic situation, like, oh, I'm
Brad,
feeling
look at me.
faint.
Don't look at all these people.
Yeah. Or, it could also be like the monster feint that final girls do all the time when they're faced with a monster alien, and she just falls right into the alien's arms or the gorilla's arms. It doesn't work for her because...
Brad just kind of flaps her to wake her up.
Yeah, like he barely catches her, first of all. And he's like caught off guard to where he can't really... He doesn't help her sit down. But they're also totally caught off guard. And wow, people sitting in the audience are with them there. They don't know what is going on.
The guests turn to face the camera and hold up their right hands. The Transylvanians are breaking the fourth wall, just like Krim. So you can tell that the Transylvanians are talking to the audience.
And maybe they're coming from the same place.
Maybe.
Maybe they're from the same planet.
Maybe.
And they continue to sing Let's Do the Time Warp Again. Janet in Brad's arms starts to wake up a little bit, and Magenta begins to dance forward in a trance, almost drunkenly, beckoning Brad and Janet to follow her as Riff Raff manually pushes them forward, because now that they've set their plan in action, they are going to make sure that this mutiny goes off without a hitch.
It's so dreamy. Oh, fantasy free me. So you can't see me? No, not at all.
Is she talking about how she's gonna, watch Janet hook up with Rocky later?
Probably. Maybe she just does that to everybody. Maybe she's always watching.
And Brad and Janet don't like that. They look at each other in alarm, and she continues...
In another dimension, with voyeuristic intention, well secluded, I see all.
So, yeah, it's like, maybe this is a regular Transylvanian thing. They're all voyeurs. It's a taboo behavior to participate in, at least in American culture, in American society, and I guess also in just, the modern world.
Earth society.
Earth society.
Contemporary Earth society.
Right. And it makes me wonder if Transylvania is a planet that is constantly either monitoring each other and everyone's on secret surveillance all the time,
Or is she talking about how drunk people like herself observe the world around them? So remember we said that Riff Raff is kind of the morphine, heroin type of...
he's on a lower,
Yes.
he's a little bit his outburst at the beginning of the song, he's about to go back into that creepy monotone speak singing, and Magenta is a little bit different. She's talk singing like if she's drunk.
Yeah, she's kind of slurring it and moving around all fluidly. Like, she looks drunk, and apparently she was drunk.
The flask I think we see her drink from later,
Yes.
was a real working, functioning prop.
That she kept in her boobs.
We don't really know what Magenta and Riff Raff are up to because this is not straightforward lyricism. They are kind of like working a spell on Brad and Janet, and they're kind of getting them into this like long-winded monologuing, huge words that like Brad and Janet are caught off guard already. Our audience members are caught off guard already, that like we don't even take Riffs and Magenta's words at face value. We just see them kind of walking around like a drunk person and a stoned person. With that rounds out our 7 minutes this episode.
It does.
And next episode, we'll be finishing up the time warp. We'll be jumping to the left with just a step to the right. And we'll see who or what is descending from that giant elevator shaft we just got a sneak preview of. And, oh yeah, the next time we're going to totally talk about our patron saint, Tim Curry. So follow us on all of our social medias.
We've got Instagram at Time Warp Radio. We've got our blog spot,
timewarpradio.blogspot.com. We've got our Facebook, Time Warp Radio Podcast.
and you can send us an email if you want to, timewarpradiopod@gmail.com.
Otherwise, we will talk to you guys next time. And remember, on Wednesdays we watch Rocky.
Bye.
Bye.
Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and we appreciate all your feedback. We'll see you next time.